Welcome to the Artaholics podcast on Wednesday night. What do you want to talk about, Myz? Got anything? Any ideas?
Cricket, IPL. I don't watch the cricket. I don't watch the IPL, but we can talk about it.
There's got to be something going on in politics at the moment. There's always something. Some politicians done something. Anything but what's just happened at the Etihad, I guess. Man, actually, weirdly, I'm feeling relatively more zen about it than I thought I would. And I don't know whether that's just because it feels like a very humbling defeat. Like it wasn't like going toe to toe and then someone made a mistake and we conceded and then, and there's that big feeling of regret. I sort of don't really have this feeling of regret today. I have a bit of a feeling of, whoa, okay. There's a bit of a gap there. How do you feel?
I wouldn't say I'm there yet. I wouldn't say I'm feeling how you're feeling. Deflated is probably the right word. I feel like I went into the game quite hopeful, to be fair. I'm not saying that I thought we'd go and win, but I was expecting a lot more than what we got and what we saw from us. But I think, I think what's most deflating about it all is you now see just how good City are, and they pretty much had a fully fit squad. I mean, I don't know if that would have made a difference, even if they had a few injuries, but you just see their strength in depth. You see how good their first 11 are. And then you kind of compare it to ours. And I'm not saying, I'm definitely not criticizing, we're not in a position to criticize these players and what the team have done so far this season, because it's been amazing, but there's still obviously a gulf. Maybe there won't be a huge gulf in points come the end of the season. If City do go on to win it, it might only be by a few points, but I think you can tell, we played them 3 times this season. And tonight especially, you just saw a huge gulf in, quality, experience, know-how, execution, everything really. And we didn't really have an answer. We didn't have an answer today. And that's probably why it feels like it feels now. Quite deflated.
I think you put it spectacularly well. Sometimes it's hard to know, right, with games like this, how much was down to planning and how much was down to execution. I think, on the face of it from this game, it really, it felt like City had total control of their plan, of their ideas, and total control of executing it. Like total clarity and sort of calmness about what needed to happen, what needed to be done today. And so clearly, on the evidence, it would suggest that their planning was solid and they executed against that plan and did that well. With us, it's hard, isn't it? Because it's hard to figure out which of those things went well. Maybe both didn't. Well, certainly we didn't execute well. But it would be interesting to know, and I guess we'll never know, what was the plan exactly? Was there a different plan? Did we have some ideas as to how we thought we were going to mitigate what we ended up facing? And did we just not do those things very well? I don't know. To me, just on the basis of what I saw, it looked to me like we weren't really doing anything of focus. It felt like we were sort of it seemed like we had sort of rocked up, and obviously this didn't happen. We would have been preparing, but I'm just saying in terms of what I saw, what it came across was that we sort of turned up and said, all right, let's try and win this game, and tried to do some of the basic things that we sort of tend to do, just did not have an answer to any of the specific things that they did. And that was disappointing for me of a game of this magnitude. But yeah, at some point, maybe we do have to just give our hats off to City. I just, I tweeted just before we got on air that I think Pep's got this amazing ability. I mean, regardless of how good his squad is and his players are, whether this be here or Bayern Munich or Barcelona, regardless, he seems to just have this brilliant talent of getting his players to believe that unless they're at their very best in any game, they will not win. Like, it's like he's got this way of just making them cultivating some fear in the opposition that they're playing, in the sense that he genuinely, and I think to be able to say it is one thing, but to actually make your team believe, regardless of how good they are, to make them believe that the opposition will beat you if you're not at your very best, is a real skill, I think. And for him to be able to do that for so long with so many different iterations of a squad in a situation like this today, where Arsenal have only got one thing to play for, and that's the league. We don't have all this congestion, all these different different focus areas. It is really impressive and sobering. I mean, how did you feel about what you saw from us today? Did you feel like you saw? Was it a desire issue? Was it a technical issue? What do you think it was for you?
I don't think it was a desire issue, in the sense, if I think back to certain Arsenal teams in the past few years, maybe going back a bit longer, but last 10 years or so, there's been a number of times where we've really questioned the desire of Arsenal players and certain away games or certain tough games, and they haven't turned up. And I don't think this was that. I think we came up against, like I said at the start, a 11 that just basically played it perfectly. I think, like you said, Pep set them up. He had this conundrum around, what do I do without Ake at left back? And Akanji had an unbelievable, I wouldn't say unbelievable, he had a very, very good game. Saka was really quiet all game, and the back four played really, really well. I mean, to be fair, they weren't tested that much, but I guess what the point I'm trying to make is, it didn't look like they had to make any defensive changes. It didn't really look like they had. It wasn't a makeshift back four, of course it wasn't, but John Stones has been playing right back and essentially playing the inverted, as a midfielder the last few games. He's slotted into centre back. They've brought Kyle Walker back in, and Akanji's coming at left back. And you wouldn't have known. And look, just going back to your question, I think we just came up against a team that were 10 out of 10 or 9 out of 10 all across the pitch. Sorry. I think we came up against a team that really exploited some of our weaknesses. It felt like we were really light in central midfield today. And I think we knew what we were going to get from Haaland. He was obviously always going to sort of put himself up against Rob Holding. Why wouldn't you? And he obviously came out on top in that battle. And I think all of their players just played really, really well. But I think Pep got it right on the night. And I think one of the other frustrating things for me is, how different would the game have been, and the lead up to the game, if we'd have come in off the back of a couple of wins against West Ham and Southampton. So if we'd have had, I don't even know, what was it, 5 points we came in today. So if we'd have picked up those extra 4 points and come in with a 9-point lead, I just feel like, I don't know, I feel like the players maybe lost a little bit of confidence with what's happened in the last couple of games. 2 games we should have won, we didn't, in kind of really bad circumstances as well. And if we'd have come into the game with a much bigger and healthier points lead, I think we could have maybe, it felt like it felt like the whole game we knew we were going to be second best. I don't know if that really makes sense or not, but it felt like we were coming to the champions and we were hoping that we'd get something out of the game, as opposed to maybe the narrative might have been a little bit different if we'd had an 8, 7, 8, 9 point lead. And then maybe we could have come and asserted ourselves a little bit more. Maybe City mentally might have been a little bit more wary of what we're about. I don't know, maybe not, but it's all ifs, buts, and maybes. But that's a little bit, that's a little bit of a frustration, because ultimately, if we don't win the league, and it doesn't look like we are going to win it now, I don't think it comes down to today, right? Like, it probably comes down to the fact that, number one, City are just unreal. And you wouldn't be surprised if they go and win every single game from now to the end of the season. And maybe, our inexperience, and probably just, maybe not having the right options when injuries have hit, i.e., at centre back, have maybe cost us quite a bit in the last couple of games, especially. And City don't really have that problem. But yeah, look, I mean, I don't know, man. Like, what do you think in terms of what you saw today? Because I know I wasn't like keeping track of the group chat, but when I checked it at halftime and I checked it at full time, I just scanned through it and I could see you and Aaron, and especially were pretty kind of scathing on some of the players. Maybe it wasn't individuals as such, but just generally, it didn't sound like you guys were too happy with some certain performances.
I think it was surprise. It was that I think that I expected more from our players, regardless of whether I think that there was a class difference. Well, actually, let me rephrase that. I did think that some of our players were going to be able to deal with City better than they did. I sort of expected that, City would be good, and I think we've seen City be good before, actually, against Arsenal in not just this season, but remember last season when we lost 2-1. I still think City were quite good, but it felt like in those games we still showed quality, where even though City were good, particularly defensively, we still had individual quality that was good enough to cause them problems. And I think maybe that's where I'm going with this. I thought that we would show more individual quality to get through some of the good things that City were doing today, and we didn't, which was, I think, quite disappointing. So if take an example, although City defended really well structurally, I still felt that in the first half, in particular, well, the second half there were more, but I mean, in the first half when it really mattered, when we were still kind of going toe to toe with them in terms of the scoreline wasn't out of reach. There were times where our front four, one of our front four, managed to get the ball with their front to goal. So with some space to run into, with some options, and that's probably not going to happen that many times in a game like this. And I felt in those moments, whatever needed to be there wasn't there. And that was disappointing, I think, because again, this is the biggest game. It's the biggest game against probably the best team in Europe, right? So you've got to know that you've got to be quite special in some of those moments. And I think I found it hard to understand how City managed to stop the ball going to our left-hand side as well as they did. I mean, okay, fine, credit to City. They, that's obviously incredibly impressive that they managed to do that, because Martinelli barely touched the ball in the first half. I think there was genuinely a period, I think, when he touched the ball once after about 10 or 11 minutes that I thought, is this the first time he's actually touched the ball? Because I think they just did a magnificent job, City, at preventing the ball going that way. But then I sort of thought again, we still should have been able to do better. We still should have been able to get the ball down that channel through quality. So I think that was a little bit disappointing. I felt that Holding, it was a really interesting one where, like, in a way, he was the guy I was least annoyed about annoyed with, because we knew that he's not at this level. We knew that, and the sort of things that he was doing and some of the mistakes that he was making, I mean, they're not even really mistakes, are they? They're just the fact that he's not good enough to do something different, and you can almost not be annoyed at him for that. So yeah, I guess in that way, just incredibly sobering. I in our group chat, there were sort of comments about some of our other players. I think like Jesus and Partey. I agree. Again, I don't think that they did well today, but maybe it is time to just take stock. yeah, during the game it was quite difficult, especially during that first half. I think maybe it's time to take stock, and that we are way ahead of the curve than we thought we would be. We never thought we were going to be fighting for the title, and it's probably just come a little bit too soon. This managing this period and doing it in the way that we have needed to try and navigate some of these injuries and the mentality required to do that. And I don't know. It's one where I think at the end of the season, we'll probably look back on this and think, "Wow, I was really impressed." Well, hopefully we finish second. Like it's still not mathematically possible. It's not guaranteed. But you hopefully look back on it and think that this was a good season overall, and it's a stepping stone. Like I don't buy into this narrative that this is Arsenal's best chance to win the league, and they've just blown it. I hate stuff like that. Stuff like that. It's always proven to be incorrect. Statements like that, like it was like last season. It was oh wow, Arsenal didn't finish top four. They probably won't finish in the top four this season. I mean, that's going to be so difficult. All these teams and whatever. And this is nonsense, right? I mean, that's absolute nonsense. So on what basis can people make statements? I suppose that this Arsenal team isn't going to get better. I'm pretty confident this team will get better. And yeah, so it's again, it's a bit. I think maybe what it is as well. You see, like I think it goes back to something you were saying at the beginning. I feel like I don't want to waffle and go round in circles, but I think it was seeing City and seeing how good they were, and maybe just realizing that we've still got a way to go.
Yeah,
and maybe it was that, and was some of those City players who were quality. I mean, look, Haaland is different gravy, but some of those top quality players were they as good when they were at Odegaard's age, at Saka's age, at Martinelli's age, so maybe not. Ramsdale, he could have had a much better game, but was Edison that good at that age? I don't think so. So
yeah,
it's sobering.
Do you reckon? Because obviously our approach to the game was very much like how we've approached every other game this season, right? We played our football. We tried to play out from the back. We tried to build progressively and patiently until we were forced to go long because City's press is so good. But do you think, obviously in hindsight, it might be easy to say now, but do you think we should have tried something different in terms of that approach? And because you mentioned earlier, we couldn't get the ball out to that left hand side, for example. Martinelli wasn't getting enough touches. Like, do you think there's something else that we could have tried aside from maybe personnel and different players starting the game to combat that? Because for me, like I feel like I said before, City were like 8 out of 10s, 9 out of 10s all over the pitch. I think everyone played really well for City, and we know, like City just suffocate you. You get the ball, your keeper gets the ball, it plays it out to your centre backs, it goes round your back four, goes to your CDM, comes back, and every pass they're closing in on you a little bit more, like a couple of yards at a time, to the point that it goes back to Holding, it goes back to Gabriel, it goes back to Ramsdale, and they just have to go long. They've got no or they lose the ball. And I don't know, I just feel like I was thinking about this during the game. City did it to us at the Emirates, where they ended up having to go long quite a bit. And I feel like, we obviously don't have the right players to be able to do that, attacking players. We don't really have someone that's going to be able to hold up the ball. I know Jesus has been great at it, but, he's not a target man as such. Wouldn't want us pinging 60-yard balls up to him all game. I just think, something for next season, just to have that plan B or different option, to combat what City are all about. If you go and try and play football with City, it is very, very difficult. And we saw that today. But I think if we just had that alternative option, either to start or come off the bench, like an Ivan Toney, for example, right? Just as an example of a type of player, physicality wise, height wise, someone as a bit of a target man. It would have been interesting to see, basically. But yeah, sorry, my question to you was just basically, do you think there's anything different Arteta should have tried today to maybe see a different outcome?
I don't think that he felt that he had the tools to be able to do that. I think or the momentum and confidence. It wasn't like we were a team that were confident at the moment of having three games where we've dropped points. I think perhaps he was a little bit concerned about doing something which was going to require them to think a bit too much. Maybe that's all I can think about. And maybe I think you also thought that you know he played a combination today of players that I think he felt that. Well, what I was about to say is that the players that I think he felt that would give us the most attacking potential. Like, he didn't go with Tierney at left back; he went with Zinchenko. As an example, he didn't decide to play, say, Jorginho instead of Xhaka. I think he went with a team where he sort of felt, well, this is probably as familiar as I can get. But I think he probably also had in mind that he wanted to, that he didn't see this being a kind of a grinded out type of game. I think he wanted goals. I I think if I answer your question a slightly different way, but it is actually based on something that you said, Kevin De Bruyne in his post-match interview, I thought was really interesting. Where, um, again, I think he speaks so well in interviews anyway. But what he basically said was, and this, bear in mind, it's they've won 4-1, and he's completely dominated us. And his effectively said words to the effect of, Arsenal are a really class side, and they made it really difficult for us to play the way that we wanted to play. So we had to do things a little bit differently. We had to go longer, and the way that he said it was really interesting because it sort of got me thinking. They didn't need to. They seemed to have a plan A, and they had players on the pitch to execute a plan A. But seemingly, from what he's saying, that is that very quickly they realized they weren't going to be able to do that. So this did things a little bit differently. I think that's a big difference between where City are right now and where we are, because that didn't require, for example, a tactical substitution by Pep. That didn't require, that to change. That required their players on the pitch recognizing that in the heat of the battle, some tweaks need to be made to how they play. And it's quite a lot of kind of maybe experience that is required, but ability and just calmness, I think, to be able to make those decisions and sort of think, oh, we're going to take control of this game, even if we have to shift plan just did it with ease. And John Stones sort of made similar sounds before, and he was basically just talking about how hard Arsenal made it for them. He sort of said, credit to them, they made it like really, really difficult for us to play the way that we wanted to play. This is after winning 4-1. Do you know what I mean? Like, so it was for me, maybe if I think that we could have done anything differently, it's probably not necessarily a sort of a tactical thing prior to this game. It's more of I think maybe our players just need to get a little bit more experienced with understanding that in games like this, you just have to be really, really well equipped, and you have to be able to be resilient, and you have to be able to be agile in the styles that you play, and you have to do it quickly, and you have to do it with confidence. You can't panic, be reactive. Well, I'm just using lots of buzzwords, but we didn't do any of those things. We just didn't do any of those things. We weren't reactive. We couldn't change. We didn't seem to have answers when they were getting through us, cutting through us. The players didn't think themselves that they needed to perhaps do something a little bit differently, and maybe it's a quality thing, or but maybe it's an inexperienced thing. I'm not sure. That's where I get a little bit disappointed with some of our senior players, like your Parteys and maybe your Zinchenkos and your Jesus's as well. That they didn't really do that. I think, but with the selection stuff and with the tactic stuff, I think I'm more annoyed that Arteta didn't do anything differently against Southampton, which would have helped. I think if he had done something differently and had that have worked, and maybe I'm looking very specifically at Kiwior and Holding. He didn't try it, and then it's a bit frustrating when you see a game like this and you see Holding get absolutely like bullied. Like they were just doing I mean, I couldn't watch it because obviously we were recording this, but on BT Sport while we were recording this, they were just doing a segment on Arsenal's weak. I think they called it Arsenal's weak centre back. So it wasn't just Holding, but it was some stuff on how Gabriel was today as well. But it just, when you looked at some of that stuff, you looked at it and you're like, but you've seen it happen to Holding throughout his career. Like, so why is it it's really frustrating to think that it's like that's what I meant it before about not being. I'm not even annoyed at Holding. The only
Mm.
thing I was annoyed at Holding about was the third goal, where I really felt like that
Oh
third
yeah,
goal, like
the
he just,
KDB one.
yeah, it
The
just
set off
felt like
after.
you. What are you doing? Just defend. Like
He's
you looked
ball
like he was just
watching.
ball.
He's ball
That's
watching.
the thing. It
Yeah.
felt like he wasn't present. It felt like he just was just not present, and he just thought, well, I'm gonna stand here, and his legs are wide open. He's not trying to kind of close him down, fine. But then if you're not going to close him down, don't leave your legs wide open. Like,
Mm.
what? Why would you do that? Like, so, and it was just that was really annoying. The other stuff less annoyed about, but um, yeah. So I, with that, I'm annoyed that Arteta didn't try something before because what did he have to lose? I think, against Southampton, he could have tried something different. But hey, I mean, what about you? Did you think that he should have done something different going into the game?
Same as you, man. Like you said, I think we knew that he was going to go with the same team apart from Xhaka, that he went with against Southampton because he hasn't tried anything else. And we talked about this before and after the Southampton game. We were in the pub before the teams came out on Friday night, and we were talking about, well, he might try something different. And if he tries it today, then he's obviously preparing for the City game. And if he keeps it the same and he goes with Holding at centre back, then he's going to go with Holding at centre back today. And that's basically what happened. So, not really, man. Look, I mean, there's arguments for like the subs today were pretty good. Well, I say the subs were good. The performances of some of the subs were pretty decent today. Like it was nice to see a little bit of kind of liveliness injected into the team because it felt like we really needed, not so much we needed it, but we were lacking that with the 11 that started the game once we went like 3-0 down. Nketiah looked lively, Reece Nelson looked lively, Jorginho looked pretty decent, to be honest. Trossard looked good as well. And I mean, I'm not saying I would have wanted one of those players to start because I think it's hard to question. Like when you think about what the only changes he possibly could have made in terms of players would have been within the front four, and the obvious one would have been Trossard for maybe Martinelli, maybe Gabriel Jesus. But I think Trossard could have started, and we might have still seen the same result anyway. I'm not sure he would have made a huge difference. Disappointed with Jesus though. Like, not really sure. It's a bit of a weird one with him because he was a little bit anonymous. I don't know. Like, how when he started the season with us, he was this sort of all action striker, popping up all over the pitch, all over the front line, just getting involved with every action. I guess today's maybe not the kind of game to judge him on because, well, maybe it is. Maybe it is. Maybe I'm being a bit kind to him, but I don't know. Maybe I expected just a little bit more from him based on what he did at the start of the season. But then you could say the same about Martinelli, like you said before. He didn't really get on the ball. Saka wasn't really that effective. Had plenty of touches, but Akanji did a good job on him. Got doubled up again when Grealish came over. Now Erdegaard, did he really dictate? Erdegaard gave the ball away a few times. That was really annoying. There's one where he gave the ball away right in the middle of the park. Did they score from that, or they created a chance from that? I can't remember.
No.
You could go through the players and probably pick holes in all of their performances. To be honest, like you say, Ramsdale could have probably saved one of the. I mean, he was really good, to be fair, in the first half in terms of like shot stopping. He had to make a few saves, but at the same time,
Yeah, but the first goal he probably should do better, doesn't he? To we go back to what you said about Jesus, I think your initial thing was right, actually. Like, I think that this is probably a game where you should be judging him, right? Because him and Zinchenko were the ready-made players. Well, they're not the only ready-made players, but they are, four-time Premier League winners, and it's cool that they're not that old and they've still got years and they could probably still improve as well, to be honest. But they are tried and tested players, and they know what it takes to play at City's level because they were at City's level, right? But when you look at Saka and Martinelli, if you were to give them excuses, you could probably say, well, they've not done it. Like they've had, both of them have had really good seasons, right? But when you talk about top level players. When you talk about that, that usually means you've been able to do it across a season and probably won a trophy, won a big trophy, because you've been able to do it, across a whole season. And they haven't done that yet. So, and there's still time. They're very young. They'll, whatever. So it's probably not the best game to point at both of them and sort of almost judge them for today. But yeah, like I think you can be a bit harsher on, Jesus and Zinchenko and, players like, Partey. Like, this is it. This is, we're not supposed, I don't think, put it this way, I don't think there's a plan to upgrade from them at their current level, right? Like, I think that I don't think Arteta is banking on Jesus and Zinchenko becoming better, actually. Like, I don't think he's thinking that, they're going to suddenly be better players. I think they are at a level where I think he's like, you're at the level that I want us to get to. And so I think you can be a bit, and this is, I mean, Aaron has got his point here about, we haven't won since Trossard dropped out of our starting 11. Jesus hasn't been good enough since he came back. I think the difficult thing is with that, right, is that you can't, against Liverpool and West Ham, Jesus scored. And and with those two games, particularly Liverpool and West Ham, he was probably our best player or one of our best players, and we had to take him off because of his fitness. So I don't think that's fair. Like I don't agree with. I know Aaron's been making this point about Jesus not not wanting Jesus in the team. I totally disagree with that. But I do think that Jesus was poor today, and I think that Trossard was better than him when he came on. It's interesting. Like, where do you think Arteta really goes from here from the rest of the season? Do you think that he has a bit of a free hit with his team? Because here's the thing, right? I think, okay, I don't know if you agree, but it feels like the league's over now. It feels like we probably aren't going to win it, but it's not mathematically over, right? It's not completely mathematically over. So do you think that Arteta might just kind of go, well, because it's not mathematically over, I will, I don't know, do my safest option? Or do you think that if you were him, what would you do? Or what would you want him to do?
I think there's enough on the bench and in the squad where he could rotate. I say rotate, he could change it up a little bit, and it shouldn't necessarily affect our ability to win games. Do you know what I mean? You've got Chelsea next. So, for example, Trossard comes in for Jesus, Jorginho comes in for maybe Partey if he's tired, or I still think that's enough to beat a really, really poor Chelsea team at home. So I wouldn't be surprised if he made some changes, but I think in terms of how he approaches the next 5 games, I mean, look, if we get to the end of the season, like put it like this, if we get to, let's say, the last game and we've dropped points in games that we really shouldn't have, and let's just say City have dropped some points, they've still got loads of games to play. I agree with you that I think the title probably has gone. Realistically, it's going to be, I can see City just kind of just being extremely dominant now. But if there's a scenario where they do drop points in a game or two, and it could have potentially gone to the last day, but we didn't do our job, we'd be kicking ourselves, really, because you just never know. So I think he's still going to have to. I think he's still got to get them back up for Chelsea, and the message needs to be: we do it. We do the business on our side. We go and beat Chelsea. I think it's Newcastle after that. Basically, we need to just get 15 points and see what happens. The players obviously know. He obviously knows. What's probably cost us is not what happened tonight anyway. Yeah, what's cost us is what happened against Southampton, what happened against West Ham. That's what's cost us. But I think the players will know, and obviously that it's a very, very, I was going to say tall order. It's not even a tall order because it's not in our hands. But it's very, very unlikely. But mental things happen in football, and you just got to be there, ready to pounce if the situation arises, right? Because can you imagine, like, let's just say let's say we lose to Chelsea, we draw at Newcastle, for example, and then City, when they come to play their games in hand, I mean, one of them's the last week, I think, but whenever, in the next few weeks, City, I don't know, lose a game, lose a couple of games. I know we can't see it. None of us can see it happening. But if it does happen, we'll be just like so pissed off with ourselves that we didn't, win our games. Basically, we didn't beat Chelsea, for example. And I think that we just need to get the job done, really. And the team need a win now, right? Like, we haven't won in 4 games. We need a win. Like you said before, you touched on it, right? There's a small. I haven't looked at the table to see how many points United are behind us, but there's a chance, or a small chance, that if we don't sort our shit out, then they catch us up, which is kind of unthinkable when you think about how long we've been at the top of the table for. But it could happen if we don't sort our shit out. So yeah, he's got to get them back up, and I think it'll be a good thing to refresh the team a little bit. Like, a couple of players did look quite leggy today. You could see with Partey. Like, I think he didn't have a good game, and he hasn't had, like, the last few games. He's been, I don't know if he's carrying. I mean, I know he was carrying an injury on international duty, but he just looks a little bit leggy. He looked a bit tired today, and I think there's a couple of other players in a similar kind of boat where it wouldn't be the worst thing to just change it up. Yeah.
Agree. I think we need to. I think because you can imagine, right, that having, not 1 in 4, mentally they probably feel like they need a miracle to win the league. It'll be hard to pick themselves up. I mean, in a way, you're fortunate. You're playing Chelsea at home, and Chelsea are, their results wise have been terrible. I mean, awful. I mean, Lampard is, played 5 and lost 5. I mean, he's him and Stellini. I don't know who's been worse since being appointed. Like, and it's pretty damning. But at the same time, right? You look at them. Chelsea will probably look at it and go, "Well, this is a very wounded Arsenal, right? This is like an Arsenal that, maybe we can get at, and maybe they won't be up for it." And I certainly don't think it's a banker. Like, I certainly don't think us against Chelsea is a banker, but I think that it might be quite good to refresh it a little bit and give some people a shot. Yeah. I mean, there's a question here from Charles Cherry, and he said, "Mates, curious to know, how do we see the game? A tactical failure or repeat of Emirates' defeat, or just Arsenal being nervy, as has been the last 3 games on form, losing it?" Well, I mean, I think as we've sort of discussed, I think there's probably a little bit of everything to some degree, right? And this goes back to the planning and execution point. Not really sure what the plan was, but whatever it was, wasn't executed very well. Yeah, I mean, it's a bit sad, isn't it? It's a bit of it feels like a bit of a whimper, and maybe that's just because we've just had these few games that have led up to this point, and then it's like the draw, and then the loss. Do you know what I mean? It's like this kind of slow, kind of fade out type thing. But yeah,
I was going to say, I do feel a little bit relieved that this game is done with now. Like, the build up to this game for the last few weeks has been, and rightly so, because it's the top 2 teams, but it's been built up, hasn't it? And there's been so much talk about the City game, and what if Arsenal go into the game with a 5-point lead, a 7-point lead, a 9-point lead? If Arsenal win, do they go on to win the league? All of the questions that were being asked, and what's going to happen, and everything. So it felt like that right up until kickoff, and it felt like that when the game kicked off, up until the 7th minute when Kevin De Bruyne scores, where it was just like it felt like a real high pressure game. And I think I'm kind of glad now that this game is just done and out of the way, because I'm sure the players would have had an eye on it. So now we can. I mean, I said it. Now we can focus. It's not really so much focusing on the final 5 games, but at least it's done with now. And we know, I mean, look, it's not in our hands. We know what we've got to do, just in case something mental happens and City do decide to explode or implode, should I say. Can't see it happening. I'm sure not many people can see it happening, but you've got to be there just in case, right?
You've got to be there.
Yeah. But I mean, just on Charles's question, I think we kind of covered it at the start, but personally, I just think City were, like I said before, I think City were basically perfect today. I don't think we were awful. There's definitely some questions to be asked of certain performances and certain kind of decisions, and things that we maybe could have done differently. But I think City were almost perfect today, and I think that's what they are at the end of the day, right? They're what? How many times has this team won the Premier League now? As in this like group of players, pretty much. It's probably 3-4 times, whatever it is. They know what to do in these sorts of games. They know what it takes. They know the level that they need to kind of rise to, or raise their game to. And that's what they were able to do. And I think it's kind of it's not similar to this. I was going to compare it to the Spurs game at the end of last season when we lost and kind of we gave up our top 4 spot. It's I'm not comparing it in terms of the game or the opposition, but just in terms of a learning experience, right? I'm kind of hoping that it's just another kind of like the Liverpool game as well, and maybe even the West Ham game. These are all games where things haven't gone our way, but I'm hoping that the team, sorry, take something away from it in terms of a lesson and experience, and it should hopefully build their character and mentality for future seasons if this team stays together for a few more years. That's what you've kind of got to take out of it,
That's
right?
what you
Like,
hope.
yeah,
You do. You do. Just kind of going a bit off topic a little bit, back to the holding thing, actually. I was thinking about this earlier. I feel a bit sorry for him as well, because I think that when people look back on this season, and let's assume that we don't go on to win the league, I think people will look back on it and be like, it all went wrong when Saliba got injured, and
yeah,
that because that is kind of that's almost like the headline point, right? We had this centre back who was just this prodigious talent, and set the Premier League alight in many ways. He was kind of just this is amazing talent and an Arsenal top of the league, and then he gets injured, and then it all goes wrong, and that I think even as an Arsenal fan who has been in the detail or whatever, I think I'll still look back on this season, and when I think about it and think about that game where Saliba and Saliba and Tomiyasu got injured, there just feels so much regret that if that didn't happen, what could have been. And I feel a bit sorry for Holding in that way, because I think that there's a very good chance that this is Holding's last season at Arsenal. Like
yeah,
there's a good chance of that. And you sort of feel like he probably will know that that narrative may exist about this season, and he'll probably know from living through it that it was difficult. Like it was really difficult, him coming into the team, and the team trying to keep up that required level. And he himself, we've sat here and we've we've hypothesized about whether how much of Arsenal not playing very well recently has been indirectly down to him. And we've hypothesized about that. The thing is, not only will we never know, but he may never know, the team may never know, like how much of it was actually down to that. And so I'm a bit sad for him in that. I think that I'm sure that will be eating away with in the back of his mind a little bit. But I still do think that he's been a really good servant to the club, because I think that ultimately, right, even in the banter era years, right, where we were eighth, and under kind of various kind of iterations of Arteta's team, Arteta, but even prior to that with Emery and Wenger, like Holding was he never held down a first team place. Like during these banter era times, the managers rated Mustafi, Socrates more than they rated Holding. So I think all the managers felt that he had limitations. Managers, all of them felt that for whatever reason, he just wasn't quite kind of good enough. But there was something about him. There's like heart, and he had the ability to put in, a good performance every now and again. And he was a good pro, and all that, all those really good things, And I'll still remember him very positively for the FA Cup final, which
yeah,
we won, where he had a blinder. But I do feel sorry for him, because I feel like it is just, the last few games, Holding has been a theme that we've discussed, and Anyway, it's
Mm.
it's slightly unfortunate.
He
But
wasn't actually the. It's kind of irrelevant now, but he wasn't actually that bad today. I know that he wasn't great either, and I don't know if you agree, but I felt like, despite the fact that he's no Saliba, obviously, especially on the ball, but I thought on the ball today he was actually all right in terms of he didn't seem to panic too often. The one, yeah, I mean, look, we could analyze Holding all day. I guess it's kind of pointless, like you say, he might not even be at Arsenal next season. But yeah, I we're calling out a few players before, but I didn't think he was that bad, and ultimately came up against the best striker in the world, probably, and probably the best, if not one of the best number tens in the world as well. So, you know, just need to
yeah,
sort that out for next season, don't we? Really, we need to make sure that we are
yeah,
not relying on him.
it is because you're right. Because I mean, Haaland could do what he did today to most defenders, and that's
Yeah,
I think that's the annoying thing, right? Where like I think the problem is with Holding, you know that that's the outcome that it's going to be, but with many other defenders, it may very well be the outcome, and I think that sometimes is the frustration where it's just where you see it happening and it's exactly how you thought it would happen in your head. Um,
yeah.
but you know, it's
But like even for the first goal, right? Like the
yeah.
first goal, what does he do differently there? Like with Haaland.
I'm trying to remember
So
the
the
first goal.
first goal is
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
ball comes
That's
into
just
Haaland. Like
you're totally
there's
right. So
nothing
again,
else he can do. Yeah. Sorry, go
you're
on.
totally right. You're right. There's nothing else he can do. But you know, maybe there are other centre backs in the world who may have managed to stay
Anticipated.
stronger or
Mm.
anticipate exactly because Haaland's so good at in that situation that Haaland was really really good at reading. I think the exact flight of the ball,
Mm.
and because it's not easy because he's getting pushed around by Holding like it is a physical kind of tussle, which it should be, but he's read it so well, and then you need a defender who's just as skillful at doing that. And yeah, that kind of wasn't the case. But the thing is, there are other times today that although they didn't lead to goals, Gabriel did the same thing with Haaland and was losing out. Haaland was beating Gabriel for it, and Gabriel is someone that I'd say is much better at reading the game in that way and reading the flight of balls, and he's been really good this season. So it could happen to to most
Yeah.
defenders. So yeah, I get that. And Charles is in his points here is talking about all the players that have been Arsenal tormentors as the years have gone by, KDB, Firmino, Drogba, and Rooney, etc. But we don't.
It's a
Arsenal
good
haven't really
point.
had one.
Sorry.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is interesting because I think um, the when we had Van Persie, he had that period where
Mm.
he was, I think, pretty like pretty scary for most teams. I feel like he had very good scoring records against Chelsea, I want to say, but not just Chelsea, others. And I think Sanchez, obviously he wasn't with us for a long period of time, but seemed to be able to do damage to anyone. It's quite interesting though with that list of names though, because um, I know a few Liverpool fans who have talked to me about how they would have really wanted Gabriel Jesus to replace Bobby Firmino
Mm.
because of that, and so, you know, hey, look, maybe we will get a tormentor. Maybe Saka and Martinelli will become that. Martinelli, I think, has got every chance of being someone who just, there's something about Martinelli where I feel like there's another couple of levels. I think there's levels to Saka as well, but I think that
Yeah.
Saka ultimately is a wide player and whatever. But I feel like Martinelli, there's something about him where I don't know whether he ends up as a Suarez type player one day, where he's he becomes more of a centre forward, and it's and he just becomes a bit of an animal. I don't know, but anyway, look, we've got plenty of time to discuss some of those more existential questions, and talk about squad building and all that kind of stuff. But I think there's not. Maybe we shouldn't dwell too much on this in this episode now, Myz, and maybe call it. But do you have any closing thoughts or comments? It's quite it's just so quite good. It's like it's a bit annoying because at work tomorrow, it's randomly a like for charity, everyone's encouraged to wear sports jerseys, like
Uh,
so you're 40 or whatever. So I'm basically I think it would be really weird if I went in something other than an Arsenal shirt, given everyone knows I'm an Arsenal season
You're not
ticket
going to
holder.
wear a cricket top, no?
Exactly, that's what I was thinking. Do I wear a cricket top? No, probably not. So it's a sad day to go into work like with an Arsenal top. I'm certainly not gonna, I'm certainly covering up on the tube. I can't be asked for a train journey of it.
Oh,
But
no.
but anyway, sorry. Go back to you.
Any
Any
closing
closing
comment?
thoughts, feelings?
I don't know, man. Like, I think Aaron and I haven't read through all the comments. I think Aaron said it earlier, but yeah, regardless of what happens now, the season's been a massive success, and that's what you've got to. I think it's not going to. People are not going to think that right now, unless you're Aaron, obviously. But it's going to take a day or so. But I think that's got to be the overriding takeaway from this season. Let's just assuming City do go on to win it, we're back in the Champions League. Hopefully, we'll finish second. It'll be a bit worrying if we don't. And we're much further ahead in our plan than we're supposed to be at this stage. So there's a lot of positives. There's so many positives to look at, and we will look at the end of this season. I think the other thing as well, especially for us, and every Arsenal fan, but we've had some unbelievable moments this season at the Emirates and away as well, but especially at the Emirates. Some of those last minute winners have been fantastic, and like the Liverpool game, the Man United game, the Bournemouth game. So I guess that doesn't help to console anyone after a loss like today, and probably means that we're not going to win the league. But I think when we reflect in a few weeks' time, maybe even a few days' time, I think there should be, and I definitely will. I'm sure I will think of a lot more around the positives and try and take the positives from this season. And like you said before, man, like there's absolutely no reason why we don't next season. We don't come back stronger. And like I think we've got the right manager. I think we've got the right foundations. I think we've got the right kind of young, hungry group of players. And I think now it's just adding to it to get the squad to where we need it to be. And I'm sure we're going to do that. So I think there's so many positives. And yeah, let's see. Maybe in the next few years we can close the gap on this City team. But yeah, obviously tough one today. But like I say, should be loads of positives to take in time.
I feel the same. I really do. I do feel like I know it sounds really silly, but I'm really looking forward to the summer window now. Like I'm really, I'm kind of like, I think this season's given me loads of highs. I'm kind of done. I'm sort of done with it now. I'm sort of done with the season. If particularly it feels like we're not going to win the league. I'm kind of like, I'm proud of the team. I'm going to be proud of the team, even if we get, whatever happens until the end of the season. Again, unless we just end up losing every game and then Man United finish above us, that would be embarrassing. But and I just sort of think I'm ready. I'm ready to kind of see, after another window and upgrading on a couple of the players that we need to upgrade on. And again, like is another point that Charles is making here. And I think it's just, we are evolving the squad. There's a couple of players I think that we can upgrade on. And I think there's always been a plan around that. I think that, we've just been a bit ahead of the curve and therefore some of it's been exposed, but I think there's always been a plan. I think about what this team could look like with, a proper number 8. Xhaka has done brilliantly this season, given that he's never played number 8 for us ever, and until this season. But like a proper number 8, I think about, and maybe again like someone who can at least compete with Partey, if not, kind of.
Yeah.
I want to say upgrade, but you know what I mean, like a Declan Rice type level sort of player, like something like that, and another kind of option at right back, maybe like a few things which I think we will do in the window, and then getting all these talented players that we have a year older, a year more experienced after this. I'm really like looking forward to it, and I think that again, this has been a humbling loss, but it's shown the level that we need to get to. But I think they can do it, man. Like I think Arteta has to grow as well as a coach, and I think he will. Like so. Yeah, I'm trying to be a bit zen. I do feel a little bit zen. I think it was a really good idea to have a scotch, by the way, before the episode. It was really, really good idea. I'm I might have another one now before I go to bed.
Definitely.
But listen, my friend, been a pleasure as always. Aaron couldn't bring himself to words really to be on this episode. It was too hard for him. Nero couldn't find, I don't know how to turn on his laptop. I mean, it's been trying for months. But it's what it is. All right, Myz, listen.
Nice one.
Take care of yourself, mate. Thank you. Good night. And thank you for everyone who's listening and everyone in the comments. Charles, thank you again. Aaron, thank you for participating in the show, mate. Appreciate that. Cool. All right. Good night, everyone. And we'll talk soon. Take care.
Cheers, mate. Bye.